Welcome, everybody. I'm Jason Mashroli, and I'll be your host today for our webinar for Launchpad. We've got a bunch of folks hopping in, joining us, and so we will jump into it and get started. And obviously, we'll post this to our website and to LinkedIn for the recording. But with that, I will jump into kind of our first news announcement, which is we've got an upcoming event on the 26th, which is the next community call at 11 a.m. Eastern. Make sure you follow us on LinkedIn at launchpad.io for upcoming events and so on, so you can see the schedule and register for all of our upcoming events. So today we're talking about modernizing payment investigations with AI-powered workflows. So I'm excited to be here with Andy Elliott from EvonSys, their partner that's been collaborating with us for a while on Launchpad and been an early, kind of adopter of Launchpad, embracing it and building, and they've got a great product that they've built out. So we're going to talk about that and dive into their story today, which is exciting. So again, you've got the three of us today. So you've got Andy Elliott, head of product strategy at EvonSys. I'm also joined by Tim Miranda, fellow solutions architect and leader within the Launchpad provider success team. And then myself, Jason Mashroli, I lead go-to-market for Launchpad and Pega Ventures, funding companies that are building on Launchpad. And so we will get into it. So real quick for today's agenda, we're going to just set the stage a little bit so you all understand a little bit about the world of payments, investigation software, kind of framing up the challenge and kind of what EvonSys is going after. I'm going to talk a bit about EvonSys and the revolution of TracEI, the product that they've built. I'm going to go through a live demo into the solution, how they built it, why it's interesting, why it's kind of a next-gen product to solve this particular need in the market. Then we'll share some perspective, Tim and I, around how they've leveraged Launchpad in some unique ways. And then we'll jump into questions and wrap things up. So as we're going through today, feel free to drop questions into the chat. We'll take those things and collect them at the end, and then we'll address those questions as we go into the closing. So with that, I will move it over to you, Andy.
Thanks very much, Jason. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. And so some of you probably haven't heard of EvonSys, so let me just take a couple of minutes to introduce us as a company. So we've been around for about 10 or 11 years, founded in 2015. We started our life as a technology services company, and that's really been our focus for the last 10 years. We grew the business from humble beginnings with just 3 people, including our founder, up to the 800 or so we have now globally, spread around the world in 8 locations, covering EMEA, North America, and APAC as well. And we're very proud of some of the achievements we've achieved along the way. We are a member of Pega's partner ecosystem. We are what's called a global elite partner, which is the top tier of partnerships. We've won a number of awards for our implementations over the years. Last year, we actually received an award in India and Sri Lanka, which is where our offshore sites are, as well as one of the great companies to work for, which we're very proud of. And as we've been through our growth as a company, we've obviously sought capital investment along the way. And most recently, we raised some money through WeFunder, and we're proud to be a member of their 1 Million Club, which I think shows the trust and faith the investor community has in us as a company as well. Now, as we've been through the last 10 years as a services provider, we ended up focusing on a couple of very specific domain areas within financial services, in and around payments in particular. And given the fact we ended up implementing the same kind of solution over and over again, we ended up with a lot of good industry experience in that particular domain area, coupled with what I'm going to talk about in a minute, which is some industry drivers, I think, driving some refocus by the banks around this particular niche area of payment investigation. We decided last year that we wanted to develop a product, a SaaS product that would target this very specific solution. So we are in the process of transitioning from being a services only company to a services and a product company. Next slide, please, Jason.
Awesome.
So many of you probably are not that familiar with the concept of cross-border payments. So before I jump into our product, which is called TracEI, let me just give you a little bit of a background on cross-border payments. And really, I'm talking about cross-border payments in the commercial sense. This is less about, me paying Jason or a person paying a person. This is commercial business. And in my example here, at the top of the slide, we have a company in the United States that's bought some goods or services from a company in the UK. Subsequently, that company in the UK has sent an invoice to the US company, and now that company in the US needs to pay that invoice. Now, they will ask their bank to make that payment on their behalf. And typically, when you're sending money overseas, depending upon the country and the currency that's involved, the payment will go through multiple pairs of hands. It goes through a number of intermediary banks, sometimes called correspondent banks. And all of these banks are linked together on a network, a very secure private network called SWIFT. SWIFT's been in the news recently, and you've probably heard of it, but it's very much the backbone of international commerce. It's the way that money and transactions flow between different types of banks. Now, again, looking at the top of that chart, each of those boxes and each of the lines between the boxes represents a potential breakpoint, where something could go wrong. And while banks have done a very good job of automating their payments, 90% plus straight through processing in most cases, when it comes to investigations, it's not the same story. So about 4% of cross-border payments end up stopping or resulting in an investigation of some shape or form. It could be that the beneficiary didn't get their money. It could be that the remitter made the payment by mistake and they want to get it back. Well, there's a host of other reasons as well why it might break down. And when there is one of these investigations, it's very complex and very expensive for the bank to fix. So while payments are processed in minutes, investigations can take 3 to 5 days sometimes. And it's many hours of work for a person to manually research that transaction, to send a message to another bank to ask what went on, wait for a response to come back. And so it's not uncommon for an investigation to cost a bank $50 to $75 per item to investigate, and which is a significant cost to the bank. And imagine the customer service aspect of this as well. Most customers are not that happy when they're told they've got to wait 5 days for an answer. So there's very much an opportunity, I think, around investigations to provide a level of automation that isn't there today. Next slide, please. So now you know a little bit about cross-border payments. Let's talk a little bit about why we as a company decided to invest in an investigation system and why we decided that Launchpad was the right platform for that. So let me start on the left-hand side of this chart. So over the last couple of years, the banking community have got together and decided that they want to modernize payment investigations. I'm going to age myself a bit here, but when I started my career, my first real job was processing payment investigations for a bank in London. And I have to tell you that the way I handled those investigations 40 years ago is exactly the same way that a bank handles those investigations today. Nothing's changed in 40 years. But the banks recognize that there is a need to modernize, there is a need to improve the efficiency of investigations. So a combination of a set of new messaging standards, which is called ISO 20022, coupled with a new service hosted by Swift called Swift Case Manager, is introducing a new mandated change that's been enforced on the industry that will go live over the next 2 years. The latest by which banks must be live is 2027. And there's 11,000 banks connected to Swift that therefore need to modernize and do something to be compliant with the new set of standards. So there's a very compelling reason, I think, why we saw we should invest in this product to service some subset of those 11,000 banks. Now,
I can imagine there's a lot of fear and kind of stress within those organizations to comply quickly, isn't there?
Very much so. I mean, they've got a couple of options, really. They can either build something themselves, and the complexity and the time required to do that is significant. And it's not a one-time exercise either, because these standards evolve every year. So banks would have to do this every year to ensure ongoing compliance. So they would rather, in most cases, buy a system or subscribe to a SaaS product, which is what we're producing here, in order to overcome that headache.
And so you've quickly identified that need and essentially were able to come to market quickly with a product to address it in time for them to help address this.
Yeah. We've been at it now for about 6 months. We're about to launch the product. We'll launch, or fingers crossed, in the next few weeks, and we'll be ready to come to market. But that we are able to build that rapidly, largely thanks to the Launchpad platform. As I think about an investigation system, what is it at heart? It's a workflow automation system and a case management system. You need to be able to automate as much of the tasks as you possibly can, calling interfaces and APIs to retrieve data, analyzing that information to drive the next step. And then at some point, there's probably an action that a user needs to take. So, having the concept of a case where there's an audit trail that logs and tracks all of the actions taken by the system and by the user, being able to have attachments to that case where work is moved from queue to queue to queue. These are all native features of Launchpad that if we were to have decided to build the product from scratch on our own, we'd have had to have built all of those things that just come out of the box with Launchpad. So, workflow automation, powerful integration capabilities, and case management capabilities was the primary reasons we chose the Launchpad platform.
Awesome. And it sounds like it was able to allow you folks, you and your team, to basically focus really on the unique IP and your understanding of, deep knowledge of this problem and solution, as opposed to worrying about kind of all the foundational stuff that Launchpad's already taken care of. So are you going to show us the product and take us through it?
Certainly am, yes. So if I take over the screen share here, Jason.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned also, you need a platform where you can kind of change it as you go, right? So things are changing every year, the regulations are changing. So you can't just build this product once and then have a hard maintenance thing. So Launchpad lets you also really kind of enhance it and change the workflows very easily too. So
it does. So we have a compliance activity on our side that the customer doesn't have to worry about, that we take care of that every year, but it's a fairly minor effort, and we'll roll out those changes. And as part of the customer subscription, they will get access to those compliance updates every year.
nice.
All right, so I'm logged in as a manager into Launchpad here, into our product called TracEI. And let me just give you a sense of the navigation here first. So this is my homepage. I've logged in as a manager. I've got a few charts here, and I'll drill into some of these in a little while. My second navigation over here is access to my queues. So as a typical user, you have access to work to perform, and that work is presented on either my personal work list, or a team queue that I'm a member of, and I can go help myself to one of these pieces of work to work on. And there's different types of cases as well. Mostly we're going to focus on this concept of investigation, but there's incoming messages that we need to worry about as well. So the second tab here is all about my work and processing work. We've got access to some reports, which we'll come back to later. And then my last option here is the ability to search for cases. And I can search for a message or an investigation, and to correspondence as well. And I'm going to take a look at this particular investigation case here. So let me just show you an email that I sent into Launchpad a little while ago to start this process. So this make-believe demo scenario that we're going to go through here, I, as a customer of the bank, I sent the bank an email here to say, I want to cancel my payment. I made this payment a little while ago. It was paid in error. Can you help me get this money back, please? So we have in Launchpad, we have a listener listening for incoming emails. We receive this email in, and then we've gone ahead and subjected it to an automated process. And since a lot of the process is actually highly automated, I can't show it in the demo. So I'm going to walk you through this workflow diagram, and then I'll show you in the system what actually happens. So behind the scenes, we received that email message. We use an NLP process. So we use some AI to read the text of the message, infer what the customer is asking for. We found the dates and the amounts and the references. we found some phraseology that identified the purpose for the investigation, which was a cancellation request. We've done some searches to see whether this is a reply to an existing investigation or whether it's a new investigation. We've called an API to search for the underlying payment. We want to find out which payment this particular investigation refers to. We've gone ahead and created an investigation case. We've linked the transaction that we found to the case. We've called some more interfaces in the background. These are some Swift interfaces to gather some information about the customer and the other parties on the transaction. And then we've decided who best to assign it to, which work queue to assign it to for user action. So there's a lot of stuff that happened in the background. I'm now going to take over at this user action box to show you what
you've really made this. So when you've shown this app to me before, the app looks very simple from the front end.
Yep.
Which is great because that's what you want from a user experience. So they just focus on what they need to do. But there's actually a lot that you're doing in the background to automate and take care of a lot of those things that I would imagine are manual things that are saving them employees valuable time and allowing the employees to just focus on really the specific kind of human in loop stuff that they have to do. Is that correct?
That is correct. You know, if you imagine that the user did not have this system, they would be doing the classic swivel chair approach. They would log into one system to go search for information. They'd log into another system, search for information. They'd probably record it in a spreadsheet or in, I don't know, a Lotus Notes database somewhere. They would then log into Outlook and send an email to someone. All of that information is consolidated in one system. And all of the data gathering exercises happened in the background. We've called all the APIs, we've retrieved information, and we've populated the screens, and it's presented to the user to make a decision on the next step.
Very cool. And you're also kind of combining the best of AI and deterministic workflow. So you've got a very predictable process where you're not consuming tokens by running these workflows every time, but you're only using AI and tokens, you know, really when you need to interpret messages and do the NLP work, but then you're using more of a deterministic process to make sure that it's predictable and it's auditable and all that stuff.
Yeah, we've got high expectations in the future for the use of AI on this product. We're going to come up with some agentic capabilities that will augment the user to help them with their work. For now, this is mostly a deterministic process with a little bit of AI around the NLP, as you said, Jason. It's at this point in time, it's the most efficient way to handle this business process.
Yeah, that's great.
All right, so let me explain what you're looking at here. You've got so we're looking at an investigation case. You can see the case number up there. Top left-hand corner, we get a bit of a summary about the case. We can see it's a cancellation that started off live as an inbound email. It's about 1,370 Canadian dollars. I've got a menu down the left-hand side that shows me a bit more information about the case. So if I click on transaction details, I see a bit more information about the underlying payment that this investigation relates to. So, you know, I know who was paid, I know who was debited, who was credited, which banks were paid, who the beneficiary was. I see, you know, when the payment took place. All that information is retrieved via an API call. Down on related messages, I'm going to get some replies, and I'm going to send some outbound correspondence to other banks in a minute. And all of that is cataloged here so you can see what happened. And it's all audit trailed as well, so you can see what happened, by whom, at what time. So if there's any need to go back and you know, double check what happened at any particular point in time, it's all there right for you. And there's this concept of pulse, which is a great way for an investigator of a case to communicate with someone else. So I could say to my manager, you know, please help, or you know, whatever I might want to say. It's a good way to communicate. So let me go back to the case over here. One thing I probably want to do, I want to look at that email that started this investigation in the first place. You saw it from my inbox, but this is what the investigator would see. So they see, oh look, they're asking me to cancel this payment. I found the payment. So what I want to do now as an investigator, I want to send a message, which is called a Swift message, to the bank that I sent the payment to say, hey, can I have my money back, please? Because my customer made a mistake. So I'm going to go through a process of sending a Swift message to the other bank. First of all, I pick a place I want to send it to, a destination, the type of message I want to send, the message type. Now, these are all ISO 20022 to message type. They're a little bit, I guess, Greek or hieroglyphic in their nature, but investigators know what these message types mean, and a CAN-T56 is a cancellation request. All right, so I'm going to pick a template.
And one thing, I don't know if you could do this, but easily with AI, you could also have the person just type in natural language what they need, and then the system could help recommend what message type they might need. So those are probably areas that you might start to build in over time.
Yeah, I think as we look at an agentic process to supplement the user going forward, that's, I can imagine a little chat window, send a cancellation request for this payment, and it would do what I'm doing without me knowing all of those individual fields. Now, like this is a CAN-T56. It's a cancellation request, but you can see all of the fields which have been pre-populated. So everything the other bank needs to know about what I want to cancel has already been pre-populated. So no need to worry about that. All I have to do as a user is to tell the system why I'm canceling this payment. Well, because my customer asked me to. I can add some free text down here if I want to. I'll go ahead and click submit. And the system gives you the ability to define whether you want this to go to verification for a second level of checking, or whether it can go straight out to that next bank. And in my case, I've turned off the verification, that the message has gone out. What I probably want to do is let my customer know via email that we've got their request, we're working on it, and we'll get back to them when the other bank respond to us. So I'm just going to send my customer back an email and let them know that we are working on their investigation.
Yeah, there's a lot of things happening here too that are just sort of you're getting for free from Launchpad. Like you showed the audit trail earlier. As you're going through all these actions, Launchpad's keeping track of the history of what happened for you. You're not having to kind of manage that yourself. And all the attachments, everything that they're looking at is all just managed there. So it's cool to see like you're showing them what they need. And you're able to focus on like getting the right actions working for them without dealing with all that other stuff as well.
Indeed. So there's my email. In the background, we have a number of pre-formatted templates which simplify the life of the user. So I haven't got to type this. It's pulled in the information from my case, and I'm just telling the customer that we're working on their investigation. We'll get back to them in due course. So I'll go ahead and send that one. And as you said, Tim, all of this is recorded in the case. It's all in the audit trail. The attachments are there. If I go back to my case, I can see that I had one inbound message, which is the email that started the case. And now I've got two outbound correspondence, outbound messages. The Swift message I sent to the other bank asking for a cancellation, and the email I just sent back to the customer to say we're working on their case. And I can click on those and go look at those if I want to. Now, I'll pause that particular part of the demo here. In reality, I'm waiting now for the other bank to send me a reply. That reply would come back in and it would kick off another process. Ultimately, hopefully, I get the money back. I would credit the customer, and that would be the end of the investigation.
And that email that would come back would come directly back into the system as well?
Yeah. It would, the Swift messages we have set up as either Kafka topics or MQQ. So again, we're listening out there for incoming traffic. We'll pull those in and automatically go through the same kind of processing that the email went through that I showed you when I first started this investigation.
Very cool.
All right, I got a menu up here of other things I can do on my case. I may want to transfer this case to someone else. Most banks want to capture management information related to their investigation. They want to know why the cases happen. So it's quite common to to want to capture an error type and then indicate who is responsible for this investigation. So we have the ability to capture that information for management reporting. Update next action date. This is kind of a diary function. If I want to set myself a reminder to take some action on this case tomorrow, so I don't forget, I can go ahead and do that.
So no sticky notes.
No. I guess a way to do that if we want to, but no sticky notes required. So So lots of case management options, and then eventually we're going to want to be able to resolve our case, and we would go ahead and say, we're completed, customer got his money, and that would be the end of that particular investigation. Now, while I'm here, let me just go show you a couple of reports while we're at it. So obviously lots of information in the system we're able to report on. Some of these are a little bit more informative than others. Single bar chart over here, but down here I've got a productivity chart. I'm a manager, so I can see my team, what they've been up to. I can see Prashant here has worked on 2 investigations. The reports are all interactive. So I can go from that pie chart down to a list here, and I can go all the way down to the individual case if I want to as well. All right, so lots of reporting options. We've got some other reports over here. They're just tabular reports at this point in time. But again, a good way, lots of useful information to be able to mine as a manager, so you know what's going on in the system.
Yeah, that was cool. Taking advantage of insights, as we can see here, to kind of use the data you've already built up as these cases are being processed, and just using our insight capability to show them a bunch of different angles on it. So yeah, that looks nice.
That pretty much wraps up the demo, Tim and Jason.
Great. Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing this and sharing your story. And one thing I wanted to mention is that, as you were going through, you were, I'm grateful for you to say that, it was all Launchpad, but this is your product. And so the nice thing is that your clients aren't necessarily, aware that it's built on Launchpad, right? All they're doing is interacting with EvonSys and your solution. And this is your product that, you've taken to market pretty quickly, based on what you've already built out. So it's pretty cool. Awesome. So Tim, you want to kind of give your report out on kind of what you've seen and what you think in terms of, kind of what they took advantage of?
Yeah, I mean, I really like this product. This is like a real enterprise grade product that they built here. There's a lot of complexity that they're hiding from the user, but they spend a lot of time being able to kind of effort to build that in there. But taking advantage of the pieces the foundations of Launchpad there, so that they could actually focus on how do we take this incoming message and what's the flow, all the automation that we need to put behind that, where do we get the humans in the loop. It was really kind of great to see the choices that you made along the way there, and whether it was the insights, the attachments, the actual like core workflow processing there, right? Like moving from step to step, be able to get it in front of the user where it makes sense. I saw that you guys set up some deadlines and goals too, right? So if something's not dealt with in a certain time period, the platform will use your service level agreements to, notify someone or escalate it to a manager. All of that stuff's built into the platform. And especially this kind of app where, security, isolation, scalability are important. You said, there's 11,000 banks here that are dealing with this. So you guys are able to build this product, know that all the data is isolated, that you have the security that you need with Launchpad. It's exciting to see this get onto the market and people start taking advantage of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I guess in terms of Andy, as you think about where this goes, what do you see this? So this is kind of the pivot. And I've worked with a bunch of companies that are in the ecosystem that we've seen kind of make this transition to product, and some of them have been very successful in building out entire, kind of SaaS AI businesses. And so, what do you see as kind of the door this opens up for EvonSys?
Well, I think we've got a roadmap ahead of us with TracEI itself. So we'll be releasing next month version 1. We have high hopes for version 1, but we also have a robust backlog which includes some agentic AI capabilities I talked about earlier. While I focus exclusively on cross-border payments, most banks deal with domestic payments and cross-border, and the domestic payments in each country is a little bit different. So we're going to be adding capability for Fedwire in North America, CHAPS in the UK, SEPA in Europe, and all the other major countries as well. So we have a robust pipeline around TracEI. And I think we have high hopes of being able to build a second and third product as well. Now we've got one under our belt. We want to continue that evolution towards building out our product capabilities as an organization to supplement our services business as well. So, expect to see other ideas similar to TracEI, enterprise-grade products on the Launchpad platform in the future as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome. And, it really resonates because it's, as we talk to companies about what's happening within AI-based development and so on, for building out use cases like this, where it's for, banking and financial services, having a platform that, is secure, is deterministic, but brings in AI capabilities in a compliant way and has auditability and SLAs. Like, those are things that would be very hard to build in a full stack way, that you probably would have had to have a lot more development and engineering resources. Whereas with this, again, you're able to focus on the outcomes that you're delivering for your clients versus worrying about infrastructure, authentication, scaling, data segregation, all those types of issues.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. And so do you want to tell us a bit about, kind of where people can find out about this and see you guys some more?
Yeah, for sure. So there are a number of banking industry events, of course, that go on around the world every year. The two that we are going to exhibit at this year, anyone who is in and around the correspondent banking space has heard of Sibos. Sibos is a major event that goes around the globe every year. This coming year, it's in Miami. So if you happen to be in the Miami area in late September, early October, come see us. We have an exhibition stand at Sibos. Before that, we have an event in Europe. So EBA Day this year will be in Copenhagen in June, I believe. So again, if you happen to be in Copenhagen in June, come see us at EBA Day. And aside from that, if you've got any questions about TracEI, you can either contact me, Andy Elliott, or if you want to scan that QR code, Pedro Muller leads our go-to-market activities at EvonSys and is actively out there working his contacts and driving early adopters onto the platform.
Fantastic. It's great. And and if you're interested in building out your own applications or exploring the platform, go to launchpad.io, sign up for a free account, get started with our Explore account, and with that you can build using Blueprint to really prototype and start to ideate your solution. And if you're interested in understanding more about how you can build your product and take it to market, contact us. You can contact me or contact sales through the site. And with that, we will move into questions. So Lena, I think we've probably got a few questions that I think popped in.
Yep. We have a few questions coming in. So Andy, why is transaction cancellation handled via email requests rather than being supported directly within the application?
Yep. So we are going to API enable the front end case creation process in a future release of TracEI. So today everybody's comfortable with email, so it was easier for version 1 if we were simply able to support the receipt of inbound email. You are absolutely right, and the person who asked the question is absolutely right, that if we could make this a little bit more programmatic going forward, it's probably going to make everybody's lives easier. So customers of digital banking channels at a bank, if you're a mobile banking user or a treasury management app user or an online banking user, you can imagine looking at your statement and clicking on a transaction saying, something's wrong with this, I want to initiate an investigation, and that invoking an API call into TracEI. That's very much part of our plans.
Got it. Great. You mentioned, you talked a little bit about future of TracEI. Is there anything else you want to add? What do you see for TracEI future this year and beyond?
Yeah, so we're focused on payment investigations today, but if you imagine sort of commercial banking, they're not just dealing with payments, they're dealing with foreign exchange and letters of credit, and they're buying and selling securities in a capital markets type of space as well. So I do think that large institutional banks have a need to provide an exceptions and investigation platform across all of their treasury products, not just payments. So I can see us later in the year adding capability beyond just payments to other products as well, to provide a comprehensive E&I suite to a treasury management department of the bank.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Um, do you see a role for TracEI in domestic payments?
Yeah, I did mention that a little bit earlier on. I focus almost exclusively in my presentation on demonstration cross-border payments, but I think one of the nice things about TracEI is it wants to be a one-stop shop for all investigations to a bank. We don't want to force them to go and use a different system for domestic payment investigation. We want it all in one place. So I think the biggest pain point is cross-border, which is why we started there. But if we're going to sell to a bank in the US, it needs to be able to support FedWire, FedNow, RTP, and so on. If we're going to sell to a bank in Canada, it needs to support links. And in the UK, it's CHAPS. So each country has their own different scheme. The nice thing is they're all somewhat similar. They're all based upon what's called ISO 20022, but we do want to embrace all of the major domestic schemes as well.
Awesome. Clearly, Andy, you have great expertise in the area and such a deep understanding. Tim, Jason, is Launchpad intended to support B2C use cases, or is it primarily positioned for B2B?
I would say we focus primarily on B2B. That's where organizations get the most value, and that's where it's a great fit. So especially like what we say, regulated industries, so healthcare, financial services, insurance, state, local governments. Those are the areas where you get the full benefit of the platform. We certainly have providers that are building on Launchpad that are doing B2C use cases, and so you can look at some of the stories on our website. So we've got Quad Marketplace, which is actually a two-sided marketplace at colleges and universities where sorority girls can basically sell dresses and rent their dresses. And so we do have things that folks are doing very creatively in the B2C space, but most of our kind of positioning is really helping organizations that are in B2B.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason. And I'm gonna pop in the chat if anyone is interested in our Quad Marketplace link. People can check the video. Tim, Jason, how data is controlled in Launchpad SaaS solutions? All the data that we saw in payment cancellation, is it completely within bank's control or the provider control, or is it Launchpad who owns that?
Yeah, so I mean, when it comes to the business data of the subscribers, the data that they're using that's getting built up as part of the application, like that is completely isolated, not only from the other banks that might be using this, but can and is isolated from the provider themselves and from Launchpad. We don't see that, we don't have access to it. And that's really important because this needs to be, they're subscribing to a product, subscribing to an app, but it needs to be their application, their data that they're working with. So that's really kind of, Launchpad's built from the ground up to be an isolated multi-tenant solution like that. And that's just how it works.
Awesome. Andy, any more AI use cases you have in mind for the future? You might have touched on a few, but anything you want to add?
I did really cover it already. The one that's there already in the product today is the NLP use case. So it's very powerful at understanding free text as it might come in an email or in a Swift message. And we're gonna add some agentic capabilities as well to help the user. I think Jason asked me a question, or maybe it was Tim. Wouldn't it be easier if during the generation of that outbound Swift message, if you could just type into a chat, can you cancel this payment? And the system would just know what to do with that, as opposed to me going field by field by field and completing out a form. So we'll come up with 2 or 3, I think, useful agentic scenarios that we can wrap into the products as well.
Yeah, and you can set it up such that your clients could probably configure if they want to use those or not, because I know some banks are very conservative about that, right?
Yep.
So there was a question that came in about is there workflow to showcase the steps that are AI versus manual? And I figured I just, instead of typing it in the chat, just answer it live. So I would say probably the best way to see is when you're in the authoring experience, you can actually configure, what's done by AI, what's done by an AI agent, and what are human in loop manual steps. That would be my answer. I don't know, Tim, is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, and I mean the cool part is when you build the workflow out, you can start with more, automate. You can add some automation. You can have some human in the loop steps, but you can over time, layer an agent over that, so the agent can actually perform those steps that normally would feel more manual, and it kind of is the same either way, right? You can see in the audit trail the history, like what was run, who ran it, so you can see, oh, an agent did this part, a human did this part, as well. So if you're thinking about it in terms of, if I'm looking at a case, what was done by an agent, the system, or a human, that's all part of that built-in audit trail as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I had, this isn't a question, but it's something I ran across on a call I was just on before this webinar. And it was a group that was in the financial services space. And they said that to run a lot of their products and processes, because they've moved a lot of it to agentic, their cost of tokens has gone up dramatically. And I was talking to them about how the nice thing with Launchpad is that because we have deterministic workflow, we're not consuming tokens when we're processing, what, like we've just talked about, right? So that's not being handled, by an AI agent that's going out to an LLM consuming tokens. And you're only consuming tokens in this example, where Andy, you highlighted, for example, the emails coming in, it's interpreting the email. And so we're using AI and token usage in a very, intentional way. And I think that organizations, as they start to see, kind of the cost of consuming tokens, that this approach is actually a really good kind of best of both worlds approach, where you can use deterministic to keep your costs low, make it predictable and deterministic, but then also leverage AI where it makes sense as well.
Awesome.
Any other questions, Lena?
I think we've covered all of them. Yeah.
Awesome. That's right. Well, Andy, I love the work that you guys have done. I remember, when you and I, had our first call talking about this app, a while back, and it was exciting, and it's been innovative what you've done. And so, we're here to support you on the journey, and thank you for taking the time out to share your story today. And Tim, thanks for jumping in with your perspectives and questions, and Lena for keeping us on and running the questions. And with that, we'll wrap up. And if anybody wants to share this, it'll be online within the next several hours. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks.